Hello, hello, and welcome to this edition of the Law Firm Blueprint. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, and with me, as always, is my man Seth Price, down there in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia, South Carolina, Timbuktu, headquarters of Price Benowitz and BluShark Digital. Seth, it's the summer officially.
It is.
How's it going for you? I saw you hit a little Yankees game this weekend.
It is great. The summer is here. Got kids off to camp. Got to see the Yanks with my son, about four long lost college buddies, and I got to say, the Yankee Stadium is sort of a metaphor for everything that is good and bad with our society. It is great to be there. It's my childhood. It's
Sure.
Judge being this, but with Judge comes massive salary. With massive salary comes, a two-tier version of baseball. We grew up at a stadium where you bought a ticket. When the fat cats left down by the dugout, you went down. No more, right? The legend seats.
You can't sneak into those legend seats.
No, there's a moat. So I had never been in the legend seats. It is decadent. It is gluttonous, as my son said. It was ridiculous. The buffet is an end of days better than anything at a sporting event anywhere.
The wall of candy.
The wall of candy, the wall of lobster tails. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. That said, I mean, it's just the optics are not good. It is the fact when I'm in charge, there's going to be a line of true fans on the side, like placeholders at the Oscars. And then when people go in for the air conditioning and go to get their lobster tail and their wall of candy, you get to go in and sit. Why do we have empty seats on TV? It's crazy.
Yeah. That's a really good point, and it's interesting because obviously the Yankees are investing a ton of money into those seats to give an elevated experience, and maybe the people don't even appreciate it.
I think they do. It's just the opposite. I think it brings people that wouldn't go otherwise. People there. You're going to the game, maybe not. You're going for the Legends experience. I mean, it's like you're in Vegas. People are piling up their thing with steaks and sushi, and it's you're not there for the baseball, I think, is the point.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had Yankee tickets years ago, and I struggled to give them away. When I had 4 seats in the mezzanine level. But 2 years ago, when I got season Legends tickets, which were pricey as heck. I had no trouble giving those away.
No, that's the point. That is exactly it. And so, what did they go? What was the minimum buy-in for a Legend seat?
I think I spent like $80,000,
like $500 a seat type of thing.
Something like that, yeah. I got a half season.
Right, I remember.
I didn't get all the games. I got 40 games.
Right, these were banker seats, so these were 6 behind Jimmy Fallon's area. It was crazy because they're legends and they're legends, I assume.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you are. Like I was in the section with Bill Murray, who comes to 2 games, but they have in the course of a season. I mean, maybe with his son Luke. Now in the tri-state area, he might come to more, but that was what was pitched to me. Hey, you're in the Bill Murray section.
Bill Murray section, great. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, look, for me as a baseball fan, it was freaking awesome. You're in this protected area. The foul balls are being tossed into the stands. My son chased 3 down for the kids in our section. It was a blast. That said, the exclusivity piece, it just rubs me the wrong way. There should be access.
It was interesting back in the old stadium, and I know that this probably doesn't interest anybody at all that's listening to us, but we'll get to the good stuff soon. Back in the old stadium, I can remember being 21 years old, and I went down with a buddy of mine to catch a game, and we just wanted to scalp tickets, and 2 bankers came over, and they're like, "You looking to go to the game?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Listen." He's like, I got a business deal going on, but I got 4 tickets. If you guys can sit next to us and be absolutely silent except for cheering for the game, but don't pay attention to what we're talking about, $50, you could sit with us. And we were 2 rows behind home plate. This was before Legends Club. And we were just like, yes, sir, we can.
Let's put it this way. They weren't that big a shot if they were charging you.
Right, exactly. Totally. But yeah, I mean, hey, look, I think I paid for, back then, $100.
That wasn't nothing.
Yeah,
that was an expensive seat. I mean, that was, again, it sounds like grandfather. My youth was $1.50 in the bleachers. The subway was 90 cents each way. It was $1.80 for the subway, $1.50 for the bleachers. And I feel bad because you don't have that access anymore. I guess when the teams suck, you do. But when they're good or you're in a mega market, you just don't.
Yeah, and kids are not getting the same type of experience.
Yeah.
I can remember skipping high school once and going down to a day
Oh,
game. Um,
senior year, I cut with my English teacher for Yankee opening day. It goes down
yeah,
to the legendary spot. Like, where's Mr. Cole? Where's Seth? Yankee opening day. They must be there.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So, Seth, I want to talk to you because it's 6 months into the year now. We've gone through 2 quarters, and the big question really is how are your numbers looking? Because it gets very easy for us as we're sort of in a rhythm to just throw money at problems. Do you do anything halfway through the year to just be like, hey, where are we budget wise? What are we spending our money on? Where are we wasting money? Because I go every November, December and look for my cut month where what am I overspending on? But you get a control of it now. You can save some serious money. So what do you guys do in
Well,
that respect?
Well, for me, I'm a tale of two cities, right? I have the personal injury side of the practice, which is for the first time, and all the time you knew me, it was building, building, building. This year, God willing, perhaps it will equal the rest of the firm. First time ever. And PI is very different. I know you pride yourself on not being a PI lawyer, but
Yeah.
there, your revenue isn't coming in. So we're looking at it like, oh shit. I mean, it's scheduled, but your money comes in later fourth quarters when you make your money. So you're underwater. And now the question, are you self-funding? Are you financing? Whole level of sophistication. That's not talking about expenses. On the fee for service side, we're seeing, it's a little tightening of the belt. There have been some months that weren't as good. We've had some great months, but it's, with the volatility from the executive branch, we're seeing ups and downs. It's not, high fives and everything's great. Some quarters are great. But what's interesting, and I think what we've liked over the years, talking about criminal or family or whatever these fee for service areas are that we talk about, what we have noticed is, it goes up incrementally. You're not going to there's no trucking case, there's no major med mal that's going to make your
Right.
year. So you have to have the fundamentals dialed in. And, one of the things I think I've struggled with is as we've built, look, I know this is larger than many of the firms listening, but we have, 50 lawyers. It's kind of crazy. And with that comes expense, overhead, the middle level management we always talk about. But then the question is the accoutrements, the summer parties, the different end of year parties, and how are you spending money, and how do you spend it in a way that's meaningful? I think that's the biggest question, which is as you expand, figuring out what look, increased salaries always good. We always talk
Yeah.
about benefits. Some people go all out on benefits. Some say, I'd rather put more into salary. There's always a balance, right? Are you going to ever lose somebody because your benefits aren't as good if the salary is much higher? Having that thing. And I think now we're sort of struggling with, they're firms that are 5 people and they go to the DR or Cancun for an
Right.
offsite.
Can't do that when you got 100
Right.
plus.
Yeah, when we were, almost 200
Can't even do that if you're like 40 plus, I think.
Well, you can do anything you want. It's just dollars and, what is impactful? What moves the needle? I'm now at the point, almost like it's come full circle, where departments may be more powerful for socializing than full firm. Firm is nice, but it doesn't get the same stickiness or traction as that smaller group. Just had a life event where we do a bunch of stuff at my house, Dave's house. We both have nice houses, pool in the back. And is there, when you bring third parties, when you bring referral sources, they have no problem going there. Would staff rather not be at a stuffy partner's house? I don't think I'm stuffy, but like the rest of the world doesn't think I'm 25-year-old. I'm not a 24-year-old hipster. I think they look at me as this middle-aged guy. And now I have to go to somebody's house, and is my kid going to misbehave? And, so we are sort of at that coming of age moment. Like, do we end up, we did this in the past. You go to a park instead of, I'd rather be in the confines of somebody's house where you can, have everything inside, but is a neutral site better? How can we meet people where they're at? And things have changed. Like COVID was a big, big disruptor about what people want. There was a rhythm before COVID. You're in the office, there's a weekend event. And now I think that because there's less of a connection to the office, the bonds are slightly less strong, and that interpersonally, and that's why you do other stuff. but there's less of a demand for it. I mean, when you think about how many people met their spouses at work or made their best lifelong friends. I just went to a reunion for Swidler, the firm that I started at years and years ago. And these are people 30 years ago, and they still love coming to reunions and seeing each other. Do we have, and, we're trying our best to keep culture and keep those connections, but it's not, and then where does money follow? Meaning, it does, like, there are things you could do that are very inexpensive that people may love, but figuring out what does somebody actually want rather than what do you think they want.
Yeah, and I think with the number of people, everyone's wants are going to be different. It's a lot easier when it's you, maybe another lawyer, a paralegal or two. And even today, we have a lot of listeners who are maybe a small operation, but they have two remote people, and those remote people are in the Philippines or in Central America. Well, if you're a firm of 7 and 2/3 of your people are remote, how do you do something that includes them? Because it's probably not in your budget to fly in, and given the current, you may not be able to get a visa. It may, and if you fly everybody someplace, that takes productivity down. And when you're fee for service and you close for 5 days, that can dramatically impact your profitability and your ability to land clients. I always push back. I always hear, in some masterminds that I've been in for the years was, well, you got to close the last 2 weeks of December because that's a treat to your employees. You reset. And I'm like, the last 2 weeks of December for criminal practice is like the
Gold.
best 2 weeks of the year. Our
And,
phones are ringing off the hook.
and
Like,
PI
I couldn't close then.
not the last 2 weeks,
PI's dead.
but December, no, you got to bring the money in. Last week maybe is
Right.
dead, but up until then, you're trying to get stuff across the finish line. That's your
Sure.
year.
But
Your year is, you can't wait for the end of the year for everything to come in and then not be all in.
right. So it's and I know I couldn't close at the end of December. I just know I couldn't do that and maintain a profitable firm. Plus, my people are sort of in a rhythm, right? And they're taking them out of that rhythm would upset the balance in the firm. And it's interesting because I go by and I'm sitting down with my bookkeeper this week to see where are we over budget of what we projected we would spend in each area. And I know we're under in a couple because I made some moves. Like, I took some time myself and I said, I know we have AT&T and Verizon, but we seem to be paying an awful lot. What can we do better? Turns out we could do a lot better.
And
Stuff
every
like
time I'm
that.
always inspired by you on this. I had USAA. It was more expensive years ago. I looked again, saved $3,000, on homeowners insurance bundled in, random stuff. But I'll sort of conclude this with, we start with, as you're bigger, you're delegating for other people to see expenses. And part of
Yeah.
it is, what's their value of money? Like, are they ordering from a place that has its own delivery versus using Grubhub that has them? And again, incrementally, these things won't matter.
Yeah, but if you watch the dimes and the quarters, the dollars add up for themselves.
They
I mean, that's my
do.
philosophy.
And we just had a life moment where there was a piece of software. We've been talking for years about getting some pre-employment testing. We've gone back and forth. We finally, galvanized on a software. I won't say the name of it because I'm going to tell the story. And, they started at some absurd number and it came down and it came down. And, they're like, oh, I'm making this up just using round numbers, went from 20 down to like 13.7. I'm like, oh, that's a great deal. I'm like, no, like I'm 10. I'm comfortable with 10. And they came to me last week. Oh, they're at 10.7. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to New York. It's the last day of the quarter. You tell them you're authorized for 10. And if they want to do the deal, great. If they don't, they don't. And you know what?
Right.
They signed it at 10. So I think that, like, this is the piece that I'm going to sort of ask you to opine on. We need to delegate because otherwise it's just us. But that if we delegate without those best business practices, I have in my firm, I have Salesforce, I have Smart Advocate, I have Clio. I'm not always in on those negotiations. But as I see this, the empty chair is worth a lot. Now, it's a lot different when it's a new software. Once they have you, they have you. With Salesforce,
Right.
they switch, right? Once you're in. So a lot of it's that first time sign up is a big, big deal. But how do you balance wanting to provide get yourself out of it, be able to delegate, while at the same time knowing there's a real dollar cost if you're not still involved.
So what I have traditionally done is I have when we have things like that, like when I have my firm administrator planning an event, or I have a particular pod, because we're now doing pods are getting together, sort of like you said, like the department. We're smaller, we're pods. We're giving a pod an annual budget that they can use however they see fit. If is it for lunches, is it for whatever? I'm actually talking right now to my leadership team. I'm going to be stepping out of a role that I've sort of overseen, which is our CRM development. It's one of the
Thank
last
fucking
things.
God.
Yeah, but I'm the one who comes up with the good ideas to
No,
add
no,
to
no.
it.
I
So,
understand. I just think you should be outsourcing that stuff.
right, but so we're insourcing it, right? I have a team member who's going to transition into sort of an IT role, because that's his interest, and he's going to take it. So we're discussing what budget do we give him for upgrades, modifications, that type of thing. So we've averaged the last couple of years, and we're doing. So I'm going to say, hey, dude, you have 30,000 or you have $60,000 to make improvements to this thing, but that's your budget for the whole next year. You got to spend it wisely. We'll probably release it, quarterly, that type of thing, and I don't know. I mean, that's one of the things. Like, it's guidance, but it's giving them ultimate autonomy, because if they want to blow it out on one
No,
thing for
understood.
$50,000,
But right. So there you're capping it. That's one way of doing it. But when it's stuff like you're dealing with, you know, things like rent, things like
yeah,
software, and it's like these, like, because I always say, go look at your top 20% of expenses. The problem is a lot of stuff gets locked in, and you're stuck with. And so the question is, how much
well,
are you?
I have a perfect example of this. Is that we had somebody who was working here that was doing a civil rights practice, who left a year into a 5-year Lexus contract, and they had signed for every civil rights database you could get, which was costing us, like, in addition to what we were paying, like an additional $3,500 a year for access to all of this.
You're like, it's just that.
I know. And so I said, hey, what's the deal? We don't need this stuff anymore. They're like, well, you got it for 3 more years, buddy. And so I had to go back and forth, and we, even though we had to eat like 18 months of it, we eventually got out and changed our plan, and we're able to save money. But that's something that wasn't even on my radar. I had no idea that they had signed for that.
It's so funny you say that. So as we started to expand, let's maybe wrap up with this, and we'll come back next week. But when I started with some of my early leases, as I started to expand and put somebody in a satellite office, the lease would always say it's X period of time, or if this person leaves the firm. And
I love that.
And when you do, like, again, this is going back to the granular, knowing that it's only as good if you have a satellite office and you're opening it because there's an attorney there. Putting that in there can, just like this thing, if you had something in there saying, hey, I'm signing this piece. And the problem is, it's almost like asking somebody for a prenup. When you bring that up, you're sort of raising the fact he might not be with you. At the same time, that's where, if you were involved, you'd be like, hey, I need an out if this practice doesn't continue.
Yeah, so I mean, you really need to pay attention to this stuff.
No, absolutely. And it's the problem is, when you go to look at your top 20% expenses, I was frustrated in that a lot of those are locked and that I can't do much about them.
So, Seth, I got something else I want to talk about. Maybe we could save it for next week, but I want to talk about optimism and pessimism in a law firm, and the people that are there, because it's something that's been at the back of my mind. So maybe we could end today and come back next week. We can talk a little bit about optimism and pessimism, because I think it's something that requires a sort of a deeper conversation, and we don't have enough time today to get to it. Sound good?
Sounds great, Jay.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us this week on the Law Firm Blueprint. Of course, you can take us on the go anywhere you want to go by subscribing to the Law Firm Blueprint podcast. Be sure to give us a 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. And of course, you can catch us live every week, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, live on LinkedIn and live in our Facebook group, the Law Firm Blueprint. That's going to do it for me. I'm Jay Ruane. He is Seth Price. We are the Law Firm Blueprint. Bye for now.